Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lessons from Life. My name is Claire Morgan, and for most of my life, I believed that if I tried hard enough, I could keep everyone happy. I planned everything: my work schedule, my apartment, my vacations, and most importantly, my wedding. For almost a year, I had been preparing for the day I would marry Daniel, the man who had somehow made my chaotic life feel peaceful. I had a notebook filled with wedding plans sitting beside my bed. Every page had something written on it: flowers, music, dinner, seating arrangements, candles, photographs. I wasn't obsessed with perfection. Planning simply made me feel safe. But there was one part of the wedding that worried me more than everything else. My mother. Her name was Margaret. Growing up, I never knew which version of my mother I would meet each morning. Sometimes she was warm. She would make my favorite breakfast, hug me before school, and tell me how proud she was of me. But other times, the smallest mistake could turn into a storm. A towel folded incorrectly, a glass left on the table, a door closed too loudly. Nothing ever seemed predictable. My younger brother, Ethan, somehow avoided most of it. Mom was gentler with him. I noticed it, but I never talked about it. Instead, I kept trying to become the daughter she wanted. I thought that if I became more patient, more successful, more understanding, eventually our relationship would become normal. That hope stayed with me for years. Then, a month before my wedding, my grandmother died, my mother's mother. After the funeral, Mom became even more unpredictable. Some days she barely spoke. Other days, she cried for hours. And sometimes, she acted like nothing had happened at all. I tried to understand her. I told myself she was grieving. Maybe grief had made her angry. Maybe she simply needed time. So I gave her time. I also wanted her to feel important during my wedding preparations. That's why I planned a weekend at a beautiful mountain lodge before the wedding. Daniel's mother would be there. His sisters would be there. My bridesmaids would be there. And I wanted my mother there too. I wanted the two families to spend time together before the ceremony. Most of all, I wanted my mother to feel included. The reservation had been made months earlier. Everything was paid for. I thought it would be a peaceful weekend. I was wrong. 3 days before the weekend, I was working at the small bookstore where I managed the events department. I was arranging a display near the front window when my phone started vibrating. It was my mother. Then another message. Then another. She was complaining about the wedding. She said I was making everything about myself. She said I was controlling. She said I had planned the entire weekend without considering anyone else's feelings. I stared at the screen, confused. We had discussed the trip together. She had agreed to come. I had even asked her several times if she needed anything. During my lunch break, I called her. "Mom, what's going on?" Her response was immediate. "You never think about anyone except yourself." I closed my eyes. "That's not true. You've planned this entire wedding like you're the only person who matters." "Mom, we've talked about this." "I don't care." Her voice became louder. Then she said something I wasn't prepared to hear. "Maybe I shouldn't even come to your wedding." For a few seconds, I couldn't answer. I was sitting alone in the staff room, staring at the floor. "Why are you saying this?" "Because somebody needs to tell you the truth." She continued talking. She called me selfish. She called me spoiled. She told me nobody liked being around someone who needed to control everything. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to argue. But instead, I said quietly, "I don't deserve to be spoken to this way." Then I ended the call, and for the rest of the afternoon, I tried not to cry. That evening, Daniel found me sitting on the floor of our living room. Wedding papers were everywhere. I hadn't turned on the lights. He sat beside me. "What happened?" I handed him my phone. He read the messages. Then he looked at me. "You've been trying so hard to make her happy." I didn't answer. "Claire, you've spent months worrying about what your mother wants." My eyes filled with tears. "She's still my mother." "I know. I just wanted her to be happy for me." Daniel took my hand. "You deserve to be happy too." That sentence stayed with me, because deep down, I knew he was right. The next morning, my mother sent another message. For one brief moment, I hoped she was apologizing. She wasn't. Instead, she told me she wouldn't be coming to the mountain weekend. Then she blamed me for making her feel unwanted. I read the message twice. Then I put my phone down. I called the resort. Unfortunately, the reservation couldn't be refunded. One room would remain empty. The woman on the phone said, "If someone else uses the room, at least the reservation won't go to waste." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat quietly at my desk. An idea came to me. My mother's place didn't have to remain empty. I called my Aunt Susan. She was my mother's older sister. I hadn't originally planned to invite her. But when I explained what had happened, she became unusually quiet. Finally, she said, "Claire, there's something you need to know." My stomach tightened. "What?" "Your mother has been telling people a different version of what happened." I couldn't speak. Susan continued, "She told the family that you blamed her for your grandmother's death." My heart stopped. "What?" "You heard me. I never said that. I know." Her voice became softer. "That's why I'm calling you." I sat down on my bed. Suddenly, everything made sense. The strange messages, the cold behavior from relatives, the questions I'd been receiving. Someone had been telling them that I was the villain. My mother had changed the story. Again. And suddenly, I remembered being 11 years old. I had accidentally broken one of her favorite plates. She became furious. Later that evening, she cried to my father and told him I had screamed at her. I hadn't. But nobody asked me what really happened. That was the first time I learned something painful. Sometimes the person who cries first is not necessarily the person who was hurt. When Daniel came home that night, he immediately noticed something was wrong. I told him everything. He listened quietly. Then he said, "You can't keep carrying this." "But she's my mother." "That doesn't mean you have to accept everything she does." I looked at him. "What if I lose my family?" He squeezed my hand. "Maybe the people who truly love you won't make you choose between peace and family." I didn't respond, because I was afraid. Very afraid. Over the next few days, the messages continued. Some relatives asked whether I had really attacked my mother. Others told me I should apologize. One person even wrote, "She's your mother. You only get one." That sentence hurt more than I expected, because people always talked about what children owed their parents. Nobody talked about what parents owed their children: respect, safety, honesty, love without conditions. I barely slept. At work, I made mistakes. I forgot appointments. I stared at my computer without understanding what I was reading. Even my closest friend noticed. "You don't look like yourself," she said. I smiled. "I'm fine." But I wasn't. Then, unexpectedly, my mother came to my apartment. I opened the door and saw her standing there. She walked inside as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped aside. She sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "You told people I blamed you for Grandma's death." Her expression changed. "I never said that. Aunt Susan told me. Your aunt is always creating drama." I stared at her. Why would she lie? My mother didn't answer. Instead, she looked at me and said, "You've always been difficult." Something inside me went completely quiet. Not angry, not broken, just quiet. I realized I had spent years waiting for this woman to finally understand how much her words hurt me, but maybe she never would. Maybe I had been waiting for an apology that was never coming. My mother crossed her arms. If you weren't so difficult, people would actually want to be around you. I took a deep breath. Then I said, I don't believe that anymore. She looked surprised. I walked toward the kitchen table. The resort reservation was sitting beside my wedding notebook. I picked it up. I gave your reservation to Aunt Susan. My mother stared at me. You did what? Your room is gone. You can't do that. I already did. Her face changed. For years I would have panicked at that moment. I would have apologized. I would have begged her not to be angry. This time I didn't. She looked at me and waited. Waiting for me to break. I didn't. Finally, she said, after everything I've done for you? I looked at her. That's exactly why this hurts so much. She said nothing. I continued. I spent years trying to make you happy. My voice was shaking now, but I kept going. I kept forgiving things that hurt me. I kept explaining your behavior to other people. I kept telling myself that someday things would be different. My mother looked away. But I can't do it anymore. She stood up. So now I'm the bad mother? I answered quietly. I think you know what you've done. She grabbed her purse. Before leaving, she turned around. Don't expect me to be there when your marriage falls apart. Then she walked out. The door slammed, and for the first time in my life, I didn't run after her. A few days later, my Aunt Susan arrived at the mountain lodge.
She was nervous at first. She kept saying she didn't want to replace my mother. I hugged her. You're not replacing anyone. She smiled through tears. You just deserve to have someone here who wants to celebrate you. That weekend became something I will never forget. We drank tea beside the fireplace. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. Daniel's family welcomed my aunt like she had always been part of them. For the first time during my wedding preparations, I wasn't worried about whether everyone was happy. I was simply happy myself. On the wedding day, my mother came. She stood beside my father and brother. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't apologize either. She simply watched. And strangely, I was okay with that. When the music began, I walked toward Daniel. I looked at him and smiled. And as I reached the end of the aisle, I understood something I had spent my entire life avoiding. Family isn't always about who share your blood. Sometimes family is the person who listens when you're falling apart. The person who doesn't make you prove your worth. The person who lets you breathe. That night, surrounded by people who genuinely loved me, I finally stopped wishing for a different mother. I stopped waiting for the apology. I stopped trying to fix something I couldn't control, and letting go was painful, but it was also peaceful. Because sometimes, loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to keep hurting you. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is finally choose yourself. Please like, comment, and subscribe this channel to see more heart-touching story. See you in the next video.